in 900 AD when those kings of Mali decided to cross the ocean. Those two black migrations to the Americas are not the only two. There are two more, two earlier ones still. We go way back in history. Around 1,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years ago. It's such a long time ago, it's hard to even imagine. There were a people called the Phoenicians. These were Canaanite people that are mentioned in the Bible. They were half Semitic and half something else. Who knows what they were? They were very well traveled. They were very great seafarers. And they employed all kinds of races on their ships because they didn't really have any particular homeland. They were always traveling, went everywhere. They were the first to go around Africa, known to go around Africa, 900 BC. And it's known that they employed many blacks on their ships, not as slaves. They had no slaves on board their ships. But they did have sailors. They did have captains. These people definitely crossed the ocean also to Mexico. It made a very strong impact on a civilization called the Olmecs. The Olmecs, that's just as a name for this very, very early civilization. The earliest known civilization in Mexico. And everyone thought at one time, well, it's just an Indian civilization until 1861. In 1861, a farmer was plowing his field, came across a very strange domed rock, a black rock. And he couldn't dig it out. The more he dug down, the bigger this rock got. Until he dug the entire thing away. It took him weeks to dig it away. And it turned out that he unearthed a 9-foot-high statue of a head, beautifully done, of an African, not an Indian at all the portrayed features of a West African man. From that time until recently now, there have been 11 of these giant stone heads. Let's see it. I'll give you an idea how big they are. They're an average, there's 11 found now. They're between 6 and 9 feet high, and they weigh 40 tons apiece. They're magnificently carved. While these were being found, more of the Olmec civilization was found, and a temple was discovered that had also the same type of people, these West African people portrayed as kings and warriors. So, when the first archaeologists found these, it says, well, these are probably just blacks that got blown across the sea and were enslaved. But you don't make huge heads portrayed with crowns of your slaves. You know, these were obviously regents, powerful people. How did they get there that long ago? Because those heads are dated to about 3,000 years ago. So far as is known, there was no black civilization then. That came later. It appears that these were sailors and captains working with the Phoenicians. Maybe they jumped ships, maybe they got shipwrecked, but somehow they got along fine with this Olmec community, so much so that they rose to become the leaders of that society. One of the other new things that have been found is that the heads, the black heads of these great Olmec kings, wear a strange kind of headgear. It comes down halfway by the ears and encircles the entire crown of the head. There's nothing like that anyplace else until they starting to find now, these old leather crowns that were studded with gold and brass that were used by the early kings of Mali. So only 2 places in the world the same strange type of crown, amongst the Olmecs in Mexico and West Africa. So here again, there's this parallel. Now, even older than this, I mean, they talk about, our ancestors coming over on the Mayflower. This beats them by thousands of years. There has been another stupendous discovery. I mean, they're coming so thick and fast, probably because our technology is expanding, as you know. And as our technology expands, we're able to find out more faster. Over in Japan, and this relates to what we're talking about, was found an underwater city, the first ever found. It's right off the coast of southern Japan, by Okinawa, where the great battle was fought in World War II. And this underwater city extends for 311 miles on the bottom of the ocean floor. The deepest one is 100 feet, the deepest building is 100 feet, the others are 20 and 40 feet. And they show streets and boulevards, they show pyramids. I've got photographs I'll show you tonight. These photographs have not well been publicized, but they will be. Great plazas, huge steps, all underwater. Now, this place is probably related to another old legend, and that is of the lost civilization of Mu. Mu was supposed to be a Pacific Island civilization that sank long ago, but before it sank, and while it was sinking, it was not a fast or catastrophic end for the most part. While the oceans rose when the ice melted at the glaciers that covered all of this area, at one time. 10,000 years ago, they began to melt very rapidly, and when they melted, they flowed into the oceans of the world, and they raised the ocean level by about 100 feet. So this civilization goes back maybe 10,000 years. Hard to believe, but the evidence seems to suggest that the city at the bottom of the sea goes back that far. The reason I mention that is because all of the traditions of Mu and all of the research that has been done into it in our show there were three races of people on Mu. There was a Caucasian people. I'm going to use these terms, by the way, scientifically, not sociologically. This is just to define a people. A Caucasoid people, a Negroid people, and a Mongoloid people. Excuse me, not a Mongoloid people. A brown people. I don't even know how we put them in. And that was considered only legend, only myth, that these three races run there. They equally shared power politically. The reason why they did it was part of their solar religion. They believed that the sun has different phases of the year, and so they should share power. As the sun shares power with its light on the earth, so these three races had to share power equally. The reason why they believed that was they believed God manifested his power and his identity in natural law. What you see, the flowers growing, the sun, the stars. You can't see God, but you can see what God does. That's God's law. So if you live in harmony with God's laws, you see it in nature, doing God's will. That's what these people believed. And so by having the sun at different phases of the year, you share different power. Sometimes the white people, the Caucasoids would be the power. Sometimes the blacks would. Sometimes the brown would. That's their tradition. When this land sank, this high civilization brought some of its ideas to different parts of the world. The brown people became part of what is now Polynesia. And the Polynesian, I can tell you for a fact, the Polynesian legends are thick with stories about Mu. The Hawaiians have a people they call the Mu, who were there before they were. The white people apparently didn't do as well physically. They were more or less wiped out, or they dispersed and intermarried with people in China, it appears. But the blacks, however, went in two directions. And this is beyond legend now. Now we're moving into hard science. When Mu sank, or when Mu was in the process of being inundated by this great rising wave of water, they went in two directions. They went out to what is now known as Oceania and became a people known as the Negritos. And they also went towards Mexico and impacted this Olmec civilization. The reason why we now know that is because there was a genetic trace done. You know about DNA now. That's getting a lot of play in the paper. DNA means you can trace the genetic code of a people. The genetic code of and there are still native blacks in Mexico. That's never been explained by archaeologists before Columbus arrived. DNA tests done on them. DNA tests done on the bones of some of the Olmec people, not all of them, the ancient remains, show a definite genetic trace, not to Africa only, but across the Pacific. When they found that out, they said that's got to be wrong. It just doesn't matter. There are no black people out in the Pacific, but there's this definite lineage they could trace out towards Hawaii and beyond Hawaii. Then they began a worldwide match of DNA. Well, who does these strange black people, who do they match up with? They don't match up with Africans. They matched up with the Negritos in Oceania. It looks now, scientists believe, there was a central point from which they went in both directions. So this is a marvelous heritage, and some people say, well, you're a white guy, how can you talk about stuff like this? I get flack from this on both sides. The purpose of our magazine is to tell the truth about what happened to our country and our continents before Columbus. And if it shows that there were white Vikings here, and there were, we tell that. And if it shows that there were Asians here visiting, Chinese here visiting Mexico, we'll tell about that. And if there were blacks here, we have to tell that too. That's all.